Welcome to Empowering Workers, Federal Employees' Disability and Employment Rights and Social Security Disability for All.
Hello and welcome to Empowering Workers, Federal Employees' Disability and Employment Rights and Social Security Disability for All with Eric L. Pines. Eric is a nationally recognized federal employment lawyer, mediator, and attorney business coach. He represents federal employees and acts as in-house counsel for thousands of federal employees through his work as a federal employee labor union representative. I'm your host, John Clements, and today's episode is Should I Take a Settlement or Keep Fighting? So Eric, welcome back to the show.
Hi, John. It's great to be back.
Yeah, I love talking with you. So I'm excited to get into it today. So let's do that. First question. What types of settlement offers do federal employees usually receive, and how can they tell if those offers are fair or not?
So this is a very fun question for me because I would say my passion is helping federal employees settle cases. Why do I say that? Some people's passion is to litigate cases to the end, to win, to stomp on the enemy. So we have people in this firm that do enjoy doing that. I know who to employ for the right thing, but I'm a mediator by nature. I mediated for Library of Congress for a number of years, and I have a passion and a knack for being able to work with the agency and try to help my clients reach a settlement. And the reason why I think it's many times, most of the time, better to settle a case is generally you're going to continue working in your job. Of course, that may not be so clear these days with Doge, but I don't know when this is going to be watched. But in general, you're going to keep working in your job. And if you're going to keep working in your job, you don't want to destroy the relationship. You don't want this kind of slash and burn type situation where you have to go back to the same person that you sued or you got cross-examined by. So in general, working out a settlement, first of all, can get you a result that is going to make your life so much more peaceful, which is many times what people want when they're reaching out to an attorney. They have stress at work and they want that stress to be over. That's number one. And number two, many times, believe it or not, you can get things in settlement that you cannot get if you win the case, because federal judges, when it comes to administrative court, do not have the power to order many of the things that our clients, or that people, federal employees in general, want. But in a settlement, you really could ask for anything you want. And that's not to say you're going to always get it, but you technically could get it, because an agreement can be about whatever you want it to be about. But winning a case is about whatever the law or the regulation allows.
Oh, see, so that's interesting, because someone might construe that to say, oh, it's always better to take a settlement or to not take the settlement maybe. So talk to me a little bit about the risks of rejecting a settlement and continuing the legal battle.
Well, that sort of takes the answer I was giving before a step further. Basically, if a settlement's out there and it is the type of settlement that gives you something you want, and there's a famous saying when it comes to settlements, there's as long as you're unhappy and the other side, in this case, the agency you work for, is unhappy, then you got a good settlement, because a settlement is about giving and taking, and both sides have to give and both sides have to take. So let's assume there is something in that settlement that is worthwhile for you. So that's the bird in the hand, as they say. Sorry to be cliche, but to have that sure thing, to have a contract, a settlement is a contract. To have a contract that guarantees you that sure thing is a wonderful position to be in, as opposed to putting your fate in the hands of a judge. And even if you do put your fate in the hands of a judge, you may be in a situation where ultimately you win the case, but the agency appeals and it sits there for another year, another 2 years, and you may win and you may lose. And the situation could just continue on and on and on. So the answer is, if you reject a settlement and has something in it that you actually want. Now, mind you, if there's nothing in the settlement you want, obviously you should not settle the case. But if there's something in it that you want, then you get that thing that you want. And generally, I would say 95% of the time, the agency does comply with settlements and you get that thing and you can move on with your life. And you can stop paying the attorney, which I'm sure is many clients' favorite thing, which I know it would be mine when I hire an attorney.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I am curious, though. You mentioned that the joke, if I'm unhappy and they're unhappy, then that's a pretty good deal, which is probably half joke, half true, I'm sure. So, but it does raise an interesting question. When is it worth negotiating for more? Like, what is that line?
I would say it's when that's the beauty of talking to an attorney. The attorney can tell you what your chances of winning are. And when if the attorney says to you, you've got yourself a really good case, and I can tell you, if you approach me, I'm not going to say that all that often because it's very hard to have a really good case in this field. But many times it makes sense to file a case anyway, even if you don't have the best case, because it does create that leverage to help you reach a settlement. But let's assume you do have a good case, and let's assume the attorney says you have a great case. That's when you can start calling the shots. And then the question becomes more, am I willing to keep paying the attorney? Am I willing to, or maybe the attorney would take on a contingency in that rare case when you have that slam dunk case. But if you're in a situation where basically the attorney is making it clear you can get more and you need more out of that settlement, that's when the time that you should probably continue to negotiate for more. But to answer your question, it's a sliding scale based on the strength of your case and your tolerance for either paying the attorney or patience for the end of the process.
I see that. That makes sense. So as opposed to what you may personally want, when you're in your bed at night thinking about it, it's really much more about like, well, how strong is my case? Is it realistic to get that thing?
Exactly.
Yeah. And then you mentioned also, just in passing, that you mentioned that these settlements are contracts, I think. And so I'm curious, when you reach a settlement, is that then a done deal? Can it be revised? Is it permanent? Like, how does that work?
Yes, done deal. Once the settlement, well, first the settlement comes as a draft, and both sides can comment and make changes, assuming both sides are willing to make changes. But once it's signed, then that's it. It's over. Once all sides have signed it, it is then a binding contract, and then you have to live by that. And it is not revisited. You basically waived your rights to either your existing case or all cases. A lot of times the agency wants you to waive your rights to all cases that you have outstanding. You cannot waive future rights, but you can waive present rights that you had.
I see. So it is final. And then I'm curious to know, if it's final, then it's very important the process whereby we get to this final resolution. So when you're negotiating a settlement, like what part do you as an attorney play in that?
That's pretty much the entire part. In general, the client never talks or should never talk to the attorney for the other side. It should always be the attorney. Now, there might be a mediation where the parties sit down with a third party and you'll get an opportunity to speak as the client. But in general, when it comes to actual negotiations, I would say 99% of the time, it's 100% on the attorney. That's their job. And that's, like I said, my passion and my forte. That's what I'm doing most of the time, is assisting people with reaching resolution. It's some type of mediation or settlement discussion.
I see. So you're basically going on the client's behalf, and you're talking with the other attorney from the other side for the agency, for example?
Exactly.
Okay. And sometimes it sounds like there may be a third party, like a mediator, involved too?
That's exactly right.
Okay. And would a judge ever play a role in any negotiation, or is that like before you would get to the judge?
No, sometimes a judge does. Sometimes it's before, and then obviously it wouldn't be the judge. But many times the judge has so many cases either they want to get rid of the cases because they're overwhelmed with cases, or they actually are just really wanting to resolve it. So I've had judges help clients out when they thought the client didn't have a really good case, but they felt bad for the client. So every case is different, and every judge is different, and it runs the gamut, to answer your question.
Oh, it's super interesting. Yeah, I never thought about judges having too many cases and just wanting to, have more of a work-life balance, like we all want. But I guess they're humans too.
Yeah.
And when we talk about judges, it reminds me of just the concept of justice. And many of us, in our lives, we want things to be just. We want to see justice served. So what is your advice to clients when they're trying to maybe get to a point where they feel like justice has been served in these agreements versus having peace of mind or getting the best deal possible? Like, how do you weigh those factors?
I mean, the best way to weigh it is really to kind of be a utilitarian and lay out the pros and the cons of each. But we've talked a little bit earlier in this discussion about what the cons are. The cons can be pretty bad. I mean, attorneys cost money, and the bill adds up, number one, assuming that you're paying them hourly. To have that type of closure and to not have to worry about, what it potentially could cost. One thing about my firm in general and my style is that we're always looking to tell the person up front, we're going to try and settle this case for you. Now, sometimes people call me and they have this slam dunk case and they say, and the agency's not going to settle. And we have no problem litigating that case, but we're always going to try to tell the client, look, give us a certain, we tell them a certain reasonable sum for a trust they put money down in trust, and we'll do our best to try and resolve this case for you within that amount of money, because this is not about making the attorneys rich. Don't get me wrong. Any lawyer who says he's not in it to make, well, I shouldn't say any lawyer, most lawyers are in it to make money, but you want an honest lawyer who admits it, number one. But you also want an honest lawyer who says to you up front that, look, I know what it's like to be in your shoes. Let me see if I can try to settle this, take a smaller retainer than someone who takes one that's going to go to hearing, and let's see if we can resolve it. And sometimes I tell my clients, hey, if we can't resolve with this amount of money, before you give us another penny, let's sit down and talk again and make sure this is still what you want to do. Many times, I would say more than half of the time, I'm actually able to get a settlement for my clients. And many times I can get them their attorney fees paid back. So it's such a great feeling to be able to get a result that my client's happy with, and recognize that in retrospect, they paid nothing and got something in return. So I would just say, look for an attorney like that. Make sure you find one who's in it for your best interest to try and help you, and they're honest about it. So to answer your question, just getting back to it, the advice for if you're weighing justice against peace of mind, I would say like this: the sure thing is, many times the bird in the hand makes a lot more sense when you're paying an attorney hourly. Let's just be real. So having that type of clarity, having that type of being over with the case and knowing that you got something out of it, that's something you need to take into account against how strong your case is, like we talked about before, and what you would potentially get. It's a risk reward analysis if you win the case. We do have a number of cases here that are just really good cases, and we're not going to settle those cases for if the agency gives us a ridiculous offer. We're going to say, look, we know in the end, if we win that case, the judge will order attorney's fees back, so our client will be paid back. So it's really, in essence, there's no guarantee of this, but there's a high likelihood they're just loaning the money to the attorney and they're going to get it back in the end, plus a nice benefit. So every case is different, but that's why our firm in general does a case review that we charge for, and we do an intensive review for 2 hours, 1 hour on looking at documentation, 1 hour talking to you, talking through the case with you, and telling you what we think the real strength of your case is, and whether you should go for a settlement and have that sort of set amount of money, or whether you've got that type of slam dunk case that it makes sense to go all the way with it.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds like you really try to come alongside your clients and make sure they know what they're going to get, and then work hard to get what they deserve, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, we pride ourselves on being that firm that tries to treat people. I mean, everyone says this, and I'm sure we're saying it too, but hopefully you can look at our reviews online, or Google, or whatever, and you can see that we really, really want to be that positive. You're a person stressed at if someone's reaching out to us, they're stressed and going through a hard time. We want to be the positive. The last thing they need is the attorney to take advantage, in addition to the agency. So yeah, that's our goal. And thank God we're generally able to do that. We're certainly always trying to do that, but generally we are getting pleasant outcomes in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned that every case is different. And of course, yes, that goes without saying. And so there's always some discrepancies depending on what we're talking about. But I was curious, maybe it might be a good way to end, is just with a story. So what's a real world example where a smart settlement made the difference?
Oh, sure. Thinking right now about a client who had a disability, and they were suffering from epilepsy, and they were flickering lights that fluorescent lights that made it difficult for them to concentrate. So we took that case to hearing, and the judge put a lot of pressure on the parties, and it was clear that they were going to rule for us. So instead of going through that whole process of waiting for a decision, having the agency potentially appeal, the judge sat the parties down and said, you really should work this out. And the agency ended up building a little separate office space that had different lighting in it. And the client was able to take that settlement and work again and feel good about their position. And they received some damages that they went through, and they also received attorney's fees back. And it was just a huge win, instead of waiting years for an ultimate result. So that's kind of a late stage settlement. But then we have a lot of early stage settlements where we try to go to mediation right away. And we many times are able to get people back everything they paid us, and some benefit as well. So I mean, those stories are so many, it would be hard to even pick one out, but that's the norm in general.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think it just, again, shows the work that you do to help people, to help guide them to what's a difficult time in their life and to get them that resolution they need. So, Eric, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have you come on the show and just learn from you and talk with you. Thanks for being here today.
It's my pleasure. It's such a pleasure. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. And for our listeners, thank you for tuning into Empowering Workers, Federal Employees, Disability and Employment's Right, and Social Security Disability for All with Eric L. Pines. To connect with Eric, head to pinesfederal.com. And as always, like, subscribe, and leave a review. And until next time, have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.